This is a very complex story. The husband has a lot to learn. This is one of the best stories ever. Are you ready? Let's get started. My wife cheated on me with a handsome tall guy, who is also rich, and I do not know what to do. And we have a daughter 17 years. I do not know how to cope with this. Hey everyone, this is my first time posting here. My name is Harry, 37M, and my wife Vanessa, 37F, is an accountant. We have a 17-year-old daughter named Mia. I work at an auto repair shop, and we're a simple, hard-working family. But lately, Vanessa's dissatisfaction with our financial situation has been growing, and it's been causing a lot of tension between us. Vanessa got involved in organizing our high school reunion a few months ago. She was really excited about it, constantly talking about reconnecting with old friends and making sure everything went smoothly. The first meeting of the organizers seemed innocent enough, but soon after, she started going to the venue 2 days in a row, saying she needed to ensure everything was going well. Each time she was picked up by Brad, her ex-boyfriend from high school, in his flashy car. Her own car had broken down and was being repaired, so it didn't seem too suspicious that Brad was giving her rides. But something about it just didn't sit right with me. One night after another one of her meetings, Vanessa came home and went straight to the shower. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and I couldn't resist the temptation to check it. Sure enough, it was a message from Brad, thanking her for another amazing night. My blood boiled, but I kept my composure. I needed more than just messages. I needed something undeniable. So I set up a few hidden cameras around the house, focusing on areas where they might meet if Brad ever came over. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to cover all my bases. I continued to monitor Vanessa's behavior, noting every time she left the house and where she said she was going. I even installed a small GPS tracker on her car once it was repaired, just to be sure. My suspicion was confirmed when she continued meeting up with Brad, even after the reunion planning was supposedly complete. On the third day, I told Vanessa I was heading to work as usual. In reality, I went to the work, claimed I felt sick, and asked my buddy for his car so Vanessa wouldn't recognize it. Then I drove near our apartment and waited. Sure enough, Brad showed up in his expensive Porsche to pick Vanessa up. I followed them, my heart pounding in my chest. To my surprise, they drove to our old high school. A part of me felt relieved, thinking maybe they were just setting up for the reunion party. But my gut told me to check things out. I quietly entered the school and walked down the deserted hallways. Everything seemed normal until I heard something hit the ground in one of the distant classrooms. Then came the unmistakable sound of moaning. I crept closer and started to open the door, careful not to make a sound. What I saw shattered my world. There was Vanessa, bent over a desk, being fucked by Brad. Right there in the same classroom where we used to spend so much time together. Initially, I wanted to burst in and confront Brad violently, but I had read enough stories about infidelity on Reddit to know that fights between husband and lover usually end badly. Plus, Brad was around 6 feet 5 inches tall, and that might have also stopped me. Even though I was ready to intervene at first, I ended up recording the incident on my phone. I stood there feeling like a cuckold, recording my wife getting fucked on the table where we used to study together. I collected enough footage within a minute and then drove home. Upon arrival, I hugged my daughter and told her how much I loved her. I lay in bed, contemplating various revenge plans. But when Vanessa came home, I didn't tell her anything. She walked in with a big smile on her face, probably thinking she'd managed to ride a dick and get away with it. It took everything in me not to explode right then and there. I needed to stay calm and think this through. I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. As the days passed, I kept up the charade. I pretended everything was normal while secretly plotting my next move. I knew I needed to be smart about this. If I confronted her without solid proof or a plan, she could easily turn things around and make me look like the bad guy. I spent hours on Reddit, reading through similar stories and gathering advice from others who had been in my situation. The common theme was to gather as much evidence as possible and to stay calm and collected. So that's what I did. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update on my situation. After discovering Vanessa's affair, I tried my best not to show that I knew anything. It was incredibly difficult, but I knew I needed to keep my cool to gather more evidence and protect my daughter, Mia, 17F, from the fallout. Vanessa continued to be late every day, always with some excuse about work or reunion planning. I didn't push her for details because I already had enough evidence to know the truth. One evening, I decided to confide in my sister, Emily. She's the only person I trust completely, and I needed someone to talk to. When I told her everything, she was shocked and furious. She wanted to confront Vanessa immediately, but I convinced her to hold off until I had a solid plan in place. Emily was my rock during this time, constantly checking in on me and offering her support. The next day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. It was a struggle to focus, but I knew I had to keep up appearances. I couldn't afford to let Vanessa suspect anything. My coworkers noticed I was a bit off, but I brushed it off as being tired from working late. I needed to stay strong and composed, no matter how hard it was. At home, things were tense. I was nervous and cold towards Vanessa, and she could tell something was wrong. The spark between us had disappeared, and during an argument one night, I saw her eyes looking at me with such coldness that it sent shivers down my spine. It was as if all the love we once had was buried under a mountain of lies and deceit. Domestic conflicts became a regular occurrence. Vanessa and I argued almost every night, and I could see the frustration and anger in her eyes. It was clear that whatever love we once had was now overshadowed by her betrayal. I nearly blurted out that I knew everything several times, but I managed to hold back, knowing it wasn't the right moment. Mia noticed something was wrong, and it broke my heart to see her caught in the middle of all this. One night, during another heated argument, Vanessa yelled at Mia for something trivial, and I could see the hurt in my daughter's eyes. She didn't deserve any of this, and it fueled my determination to protect her from the impending fallout. Despite the turmoil at home, I continued gathering all the evidence I could. I edited a video showing Vanessa's infidelity, planning to display it at the school reunion to humiliate her and Brad. As it turned out, Brad had a family of his own, and exposing the affair would destroy his life as well. I was hoping that after this, Brad, that dickhead, that he would know what it's like when things fall apart, and especially when you're not young anymore, and it's not easy to make a fresh start. One evening, as I was working on the video in my home office, Emily called. She was worried about me and wanted to make sure I was holding up. I reassured her that I was fine and that I had everything under control. She offered her support and reminded me that she was there for me if I needed anything. As the reunion date approached, I became more and more anxious. Vanessa continued her late nights and suspicious behavior, completely unaware of what was coming. I rehearsed my plan over and over in my head, determined to expose her betrayal in the most impactful way possible. The night before the reunion, Vanessa came home late again. She looked tired but happy, probably from another rendezvous with Brad. I watched her as she moved around the kitchen, my heart aching with a mix of love, anger, and betrayal. She talked excitedly about the reunion, not meeting my eyes, and I forced myself to act casual and supportive. The next morning, I woke up early, my nerves on edge. Vanessa was already up, getting ready for the reunion. She seemed excited, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Mia stayed home, not wanting to be part of the event or suspecting what her father was up to. As we got ready to leave, I double-checked that the video was saved on a USB drive and safely tucked away in my pocket. My heart raced as I thought about what was going to happen. I glanced at Mia before leaving and gave her a reassuring smile, hoping to calm her nerves. We arrived at the school, and the reunion was already in full swing. People were laughing, chatting, and catching up with old friends. Vanessa immediately went off to find Brad, leaving me to fend for myself. I watched her from a distance, my anger simmering beneath the surface. As the night went on, I kept an eye on Vanessa and Brad, watching their interactions closely. They were laughing and flirting, completely unaware of the bomb I was about to drop. I felt a mix of satisfaction and heartbreak, knowing that I was about to expose their betrayal to everyone. Finally, the moment came. The organizer announced it was time for a special presentation, and the lights dimmed. I took a deep breath, walked up to the front of the room, and plugged the USB drive into the laptop connected to the projector. The room fell silent, and I felt all eyes on me. With a trembling hand, I pressed play on the video. The screen lit up with footage of Vanessa and Brad, caught in the act. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the video played. Vanessa's face went pale, and Brad looked like he had been punched in the gut. I stood there, watching the reactions of our former classmates, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and heartbreak. I couldn't believe how quickly things had escalated. Here I was, exposing the truth in front of everyone. The impact was immediate and devastating. I could see the shock and disbelief on the faces of those around me. Vanessa and Brad were frozen, unable to move or speak as the video continued to play. At that moment, I realized the full weight of what I had done. There was no turning back now. The truth was out, and our lives would never be the same again. I had exposed their betrayal, and now it was time to deal with the consequences. But in that instant, surrounded by the stunned silence of my former classmates, I felt a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my life and confronted the betrayal head-on. Now it was time to face whatever came next. Suddenly, the glass that Brad's wife was holding fell from her hands, shattering on the floor. She looked at Brad with a mixture of shock and rage, then hit him a couple of times on the chest before running out of the room in tears. The whole scene felt surreal, like something out of a movie. I could hardly believe it was actually happening. People around us were whispering and pointing, clearly taken aback by the whole situation. Vanessa, still in shock, glanced around the room, probably hoping this was some kind of nightmare. I could see the guilt and fear in her eyes. She quickly gathered her things and left the reunion, avoiding eye contact with anyone. After Vanessa left, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I knew our marriage was over, but at least I had taken control of the situation. A few of my friends who were at the reunion came up to me offering their support. They could see how much pain I was in, and they suggested we head to the local pub to drown my sorrows. At the pub, my friends tried to cheer me up, buying rounds of drinks and sharing stories. I appreciated their efforts, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and heartbreak. I ended up drinking more than I should have, trying to numb the pain. As the night went on, I got more and more intoxicated. By the time I got home, I was stumbling and slurring my words. Mia heard me come in and helped me into the house. I was so drunk that I accidentally spoke ill of Vanessa, revealing that she had cheated on me. I could see the shock and hurt in Mia's eyes, and I felt a deep sense of shame. This wasn't how I wanted her to find out. I had planned to sit her down and explain everything calmly, but now that opportunity was lost. When morning came, I woke up with a pounding headache and a heavy heart. I knew I had to face the consequences of my actions from the night before. Vanessa was packing her things when I got up, and I could hear Mia getting ready for school. They ran into each other in the hallway, and Mia didn't hold back. "How could you do this to Dad?" Mia shouted, her voice filled with anger and hurt. "I can't believe you would cheat on him. You're disgusting." Vanessa tried to say something, but Mia cut her off. "Just leave. We don't want you here anymore." Vanessa's face crumpled, and she quickly finished packing before leaving the house. I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that Mia was hurting because of what had happened. I needed to be strong for her, but I also needed to make sure Vanessa faced the consequences of her actions. Vanessa went to her parents' house, and I knew I had to talk to them. They deserved to know the truth, and I needed to explain the situation. It was difficult, but I managed to get through to them, telling them everything that had happened. I asked them not to let Vanessa stay with them, hoping it would force her to face the reality of what she had done. In fact, I felt a rush of anger and hatred because I did it just because the bitch cheated on me. I didn't want her to heal quickly. I wanted her to suffer. To my surprise, they agreed with me. They were shocked and disappointed in Vanessa, but they were also her parents. I knew they would eventually let her in, but at least they understood the gravity of the situation. One evening, as we were having dinner, Mia asked me what we were going to do next. She wanted to know if we were going to stay in the house or move somewhere else. I didn't have all the answers, but I told her we would get through this together. We were a team, and we would support each other no matter what. I decided to take some time off work to focus on Mia and figure out our next steps. We spent more time together, talking and trying to process everything that had happened. I wanted to make sure she knew I was there for her and that we would be okay. Meanwhile, Vanessa was having a tough time at her parents' house. She was struggling to keep her emotions in check, and it was clear that the reality of her actions was hitting her hard. Her parents were supportive but firm, making sure she understood the consequences of what she had done. They asked me and Mia to visit her, hoping it would help her come to terms with everything, but we refused. I knew it would only make things harder for Mia and me. Vanessa's depression deepened, and she had trouble coping with the situation. She spent most of her time in her old room, avoiding her parents and not eating properly. Her parents were worried and tried to help her, but she was too consumed by her guilt and shame to accept their support. One day, Vanessa's mother called me, asking if I could come over to talk to Vanessa. She believed that hearing from me might help her daughter come to terms with her actions and start to move forward. I was hesitant, but after some thought, I agreed. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was a necessary step. Of course, some time has passed, and time, heals, so I agreed. And I think that all this time I was driven by selfish motives, but it's time to think about my daughter. When I arrived at Vanessa's parents' house, I could see the toll the situation had taken on her. She looked exhausted and broken, a shadow of the person I once knew. We sat down in the living room, and for the first time since the reunion, we had an honest conversation. I told her how much her betrayal had hurt me and how difficult it was to see her with Brad. I explained that while I appreciated her apology, it didn't change what had happened. Our marriage was over, and we needed to focus on what was best for Mia. Vanessa listened quietly, tears streaming down her face. She seemed to understand the gravity of her actions, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope that she might be able to move forward. Then Vanessa started to speak, her voice trembling. She asked me if we could try to keep everything as it was, for the sake of Mia. She said Mia needed her mom, and that it would be better for her if we stayed together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I knew she was trying to manipulate me, to play on my emotions and my love for Mia. I told her I didn't agree. I couldn't stay with her after what she had done. But Vanessa pleaded with me, her voice breaking. She fell to the ground and screamed, "Please forgive me. What can I do to make you forgive me?" Seeing her like this was heartbreaking, but I knew I couldn't let her get to me. I told her that forgiveness wasn't possible, not after what she had done. Vanessa continued to plead, but I stood my ground. I knew it was the right thing to do, no matter how painful it was. Eventually, she seemed to accept it, her sobs quieting down. I left her parents' house, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. In the weeks that followed, Mia and I settled into a new routine. We leaned on each other for support and started to rebuild our lives. It wasn't easy, but we were making progress. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I also knew we could face them together. Vanessa continued to struggle with her emotions, but her parents were there to support her. They were disappointed in her actions, but still loved her and wanted to help her heal. I knew it would take time, but I hoped she would eventually find a way to move forward. I was proud of how I had handled things and grateful for the support of my friends and family. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update on my situation. One day, Mia rushed home from school. I was sitting on the couch watching TV, and I found it strange how quickly she ran upstairs to her room. Concerned, I decided to check on her. When I opened the door, I found her sobbing on her bed. I immediately felt a pang of guilt and worry. "Mia, what's wrong?" I asked gently, sitting down next to her. She looked up at me, her face red and tear-streaked. "Someone called Mom a slut today at school," she said, her voice trembling. "They were laughing about the video from the reunion. Dad, it's so humiliating, everyone knows." My heart sank. I had thought exposing Vanessa and Brad would bring some sort of justice, but I hadn't considered the impact it would have on Mia. Seeing her in pain made me realize just how much more damage Vanessa's actions had caused. It wasn't just my happiness that had been destroyed. Mia was suffering too. I hugged Mia tightly, trying to comfort her. "I'm so sorry, Mia. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." She nodded, but I could tell she was still hurting. After a while, she calmed down, and I left her to rest. As I walked back downstairs, I couldn't shake the anger I felt towards Vanessa. She still didn't seem to grasp the full extent of the pain she had caused. Sure, she was struggling with her own emotions, but she hadn't faced any real consequences beyond our personal lives. Since Vanessa hadn't been fired from her job, and no one at her workplace seemed to know about the incident, I decided to take matters into my own hands. It was a low move, but I didn't want to let her off easily. I printed out photos of her and Brad from the video and planned to distribute them at her office. A few days later, Vanessa came home, and she looked completely unhinged, like Harley Quinn. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smeared, and her eyes wild with rage. She was banging on the door, screaming, "Why are you doing this to me, you jerk?" I opened the door cautiously. "What the hell are you talking about, Vanessa?" She shoved a bunch of photos in my face. "These! You sent these to my office! Everyone knows now! Why are you trying to ruin my life?" I stared at her, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and guilt. You ruined our lives first, Vanessa. Did you really think you could just walk away from this without facing any consequences? She screamed in frustration and tried to push past me, but I blocked her way. You can't keep running away from this, Vanessa. You have to face what you've done. The neighbors were starting to notice the commotion, so I pulled her inside and closed the door. We continued arguing, her voice filled with rage and mine with a cold determination. She eventually left, slamming the door behind her. I knew this wasn't over, but I felt a sense of grim satisfaction knowing she was finally starting to face the consequences of her actions. One day, as Vanessa was walking down the street, she lost her temper at a homeless person. Someone caught the entire incident on their phone, and it quickly spread around town. Everyone was talking about it, and I couldn't even imagine how Mia felt at school. The video showed Vanessa screaming at the homeless person, her face contorted with anger. It was a far cry from the composed and professional image she tried to maintain. A few days later, I received a call from Mia's school. She had gotten into a fight with another student who had made a crude remark about Vanessa. When I arrived at the school, Mia was sitting in the principal's office, looking defiant and angry. The principal explained what had happened and suggested that Mia see the school counselor. I agreed, knowing that she needed someone to talk to about everything that was going on. After the meeting, I took Mia home, and we talked about what had happened. She was upset, but I reassured her that she had every right to stand up for herself. We were in this together, and I promised her that things would eventually get better. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the upcoming court battle. I gathered all the evidence I could, including the video from the reunion, the photos, and the incident with the homeless person. I knew the trial would be difficult, but I was determined to ensure that Vanessa faced the consequences of her actions. In the midst of all this chaos, I found solace in an old abandoned farm I owned. The farmhouse was still in decent condition, and I loved going there when a storm was starting. The sound of the rain and the wind helped me clear my mind and find some peace. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the turmoil of my life. The conflicts with Vanessa continued. She would show up at the house unannounced, demanding to see Mia or trying to manipulate me into letting her back into our lives. Each time I stood my ground, refusing to let her worm her way back in. It was exhausting, but I knew it was the right thing to do. One night, I was at the farmhouse when a particularly violent storm hit. The wind howled outside, and the rain pounded against the windows. I sat by the fireplace thinking about everything that had happened. The memories of my life with Vanessa felt like a distant dream, replaced by the harsh reality of our current situation. As I prepared for the court battle, I knew I had to stay strong for Mia. She was my priority, and I would do whatever it took to protect her. The trial was approaching, and I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I want to thank everyone who wrote me advice. Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update on my situation. Work became unbearable. People whispered behind my back, and sometimes they'd make crude jokes about how my wife had cheated on me. I knew they thought they were being clever, but every comment cut deep. I understood even more how Mia felt when she told me about the kids at school calling her mother a slut. We were both living under a cloud of humiliation and pain. One day, after another particularly rough shift at the auto repair shop, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep subjecting Mia and myself to this toxic environment. We needed a fresh start. I quit my job and made plans to move to another state after the trial. I discussed everything with Mia's school principal, who agreed to let her stop attending classes until we could get settled elsewhere. However, I couldn't put our house up for sale because I wasn't sure if it would fully be mine after the trial. That uncertainty hung over us like a dark cloud, adding to the stress of our already difficult situation. In the meantime, Mia and I tried to make the best of our time while waiting for the trial. We spent our days doing things that brought us closer together. We took long walks in the nearby park, talked about everything and nothing, and watched movies late into the night. I tried to be there for her as much as I could, making sure she knew she wasn't alone in this. We also spent a lot of time at the old farmhouse. It became our refuge, a place where we could escape the chaos and find some peace. Mia loved exploring the old rooms and imagining what life might have been like there years ago. I enjoyed the quiet, the solitude, and the chance to clear my head. As the day of the trial approached, the tension in our house grew. I could see the anxiety in Mia's eyes, and I felt it too. The night before the trial, We sat together on the porch of the farmhouse, watching the stars. It was a clear night, and the sky was filled with countless twinkling lights. "Dad, do you think everything will be okay?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I put my arm around her and pulled her close. "I don't know, sweetie, but whatever happens, we'll get through it together. I promise." We sat there in silence for a while, just taking in the peacefulness of the night. It was a rare moment of calm in the midst of the storm that had become our lives. The day of the trial finally arrived. I woke up early, my stomach in knots. I tried to eat breakfast, but I couldn't keep anything down. Mia was quiet too, her usual lively demeanor replaced by a solemnity that broke my heart. We drove to the courthouse in silence. I kept glancing at Mia, wanting to say something reassuring, but no words came. We both knew how important this day was. When we arrived, we were met with an unexpected delay. Vanessa had called in, saying she felt unwell and asked for the court to reschedule the hearing. I was furious. This was just another tactic to avoid facing the consequences of her actions. I stormed out of the courthouse and drove straight to her parents' house. When I arrived, I pounded on the door, my anger barely contained. Vanessa's father opened the door looking surprised to see me. "Harry, what are you doing here?" he asked. "I need to talk to Vanessa," I said, pushing past him into the house. Vanessa was sitting on the couch, looking perfectly fine despite her claims of being too unwell to attend court. My anger boiled over. "Why are you doing this to me, Vanessa?" I shouted. "Why can't you just face what you've done?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. "I am sick, Harry. I couldn't go to court like this." "You're not sick, Vanessa. You're just avoiding the consequences of your actions," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Her parents came into the room, clearly alarmed by the shouting. To my surprise, they defended her. They insisted that she really was unwell and needed time to recover. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Despite everything that had happened, despite knowing the truth, they were still taking her side. I felt a surge of frustration and betrayal. These were people I had respected, who I thought understood the gravity of what Vanessa had done. "How can you stand by her after everything?" I asked, my voice breaking. "She destroyed our family, and now she's trying to avoid facing the consequences." Her parents looked uncomfortable but stood their ground. "Harry, she's still our daughter. We can't just abandon her." I felt a wave of despair. I knew they were right in a way, but it didn't make the situation any less painful. I left their house, feeling more defeated than ever. As we prepared for the rescheduled court date, I made sure all the evidence was in order. I reviewed everything with my lawyer, going over every detail to ensure we were ready. I knew the trial would be tough, but I was determined to see it through. The night before the trial, Mia and I spent another evening at the farmhouse. We talked about our plans for the future, about moving to another state and starting over. It was a bittersweet conversation, filled with hope and uncertainty. The next morning, we woke up early and prepared for the day ahead. I felt a sense of resolve as we drove to the courthouse. This was it. This was our chance to finally put everything behind us and move forward. "Hey, I'm back with an update. It's been a very difficult few days. For a while, it seemed like events were just repeating themselves. Nothing particularly interesting was happening, so I didn't have any major updates. Life had fallen into a monotonous routine of dealing with the aftermath of the betrayal, waiting for the trial, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Mia and me. Regarding Brad, I had a few people ask me what happened to him. Brad's wife decided to forgive him, which I think is a mistake, but it's not my place to judge. From what I could gather, their family was hanging by a thread, and I had a feeling it would fall apart eventually. I didn't want to get involved in their drama any further. About 2 weeks after the reunion incident, Brad and I had a run-in. We met by chance in town, and he started threatening me, probably trying to intimidate me, but I didn't see any serious intentions from his side. It was just more bluster from a man who was trying to cover up his own guilt and shame. Mia and I started going to church, hoping to find some solace and community support. One day, the pastor came over and offered his help. He just talked with us, listened to our story, and offered words of comfort and encouragement. It gave me more strength, knowing we had someone in our corner who genuinely cared about our well-being. Then, the trial took place yesterday. Today, we're still resting, But tomorrow we're going to start looking for a new house. The trial was a turning point for us, a chance to finally put this chapter behind us and move forward. The courtroom was tense as we walked in. I felt a mixture of anxiety and determination, knowing this was our chance to finally get some justice. Vanessa was there, looking nervous and disheveled. She had a public defender, and it was clear he wasn't interested in winning her case. He seemed indifferent, almost bored, as if this was just another routine assignment for him. My lawyer, on the other hand, was prepared and focused. We had gathered all the evidence we needed: the video from the reunion, the photos, the incident with the homeless person, and testimonies from friends and colleagues who had witnessed Vanessa's erratic behavior. My lawyer laid everything out systematically, making a compelling case that left little room for doubt. Vanessa's lawyer stumbled through his arguments, offering weak defenses and failing to challenge our evidence effectively. It was almost embarrassing to watch. He tried to paint Vanessa as a victim of circumstance, but the evidence was overwhelmingly against her. The judge listened carefully, asking pointed questions and making notes. I could see that he was taking the case seriously, weighing the facts, and considering the impact on Mia and me. Vanessa tried to look composed, but it was clear she was struggling to keep her emotions in check. When it was Vanessa's turn to testify, she broke down on the stand. She apologized for her actions, pleaded for forgiveness, and tried to explain how she felt trapped and unhappy in our marriage. But her words rang hollow. The damage had been done, and no amount of pleading could erase the pain and betrayal she had caused. The judge took a brief recess to consider the evidence before delivering his verdict. Those few minutes felt like an eternity. Mia and I sat quietly, holding hands, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. When the judge returned, he looked directly at Vanessa and began to speak. He acknowledged her apology but made it clear that her actions had severe consequences. He ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of Mia and the house. Vanessa would have limited visitation rights, supervised by a court-appointed mediator. It was a moment of vindication, but it was also bittersweet. I didn't relish Vanessa's downfall, but I was relieved that justice had been served and that Mia and I could finally move forward with our lives. After the trial, Mia and I took a walk in the park. We talked about our plans for the future, about finding a new home, and about how we would rebuild our lives. There was a sense of hope and determination in our conversation, a feeling that we were finally turning a corner. As we walked, we came across a small playground. Mia's eyes lit up, and she ran over to the swings, laughing as she kicked off her shoes and started to swing higher and higher. I stood there, watching her, feeling a sense of pride and love that I hadn't felt in a long time. Despite everything, Mia was still able to find joy in the little things. The following day, we started looking for a new house. We drove around exploring different neighborhoods, talking to real estate agents, and imagining what our new life would be like. It was a day filled with possibilities, a chance to dream about the future and leave the pain of the past behind. The next morning, we woke up early and continued our search for a new home. Each house we visited brought new possibilities, new dreams. It was a long and tiring process, but it was also exciting. We were building a new life, one step at a time. As we explored different neighborhoods and met with potential landlords, I felt a sense of renewal. The weight of the past was slowly lifting, replaced by the promise of a fresh start. We were no longer defined by Vanessa's betrayal. We were forging our own path, creating a new story. Hey everyone, this is going to be my final update. Our new home is a modest but comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and people actually care about their community. Mia and I quickly became part of this tight-knit community, and the support we received made all the difference. There was one unexpected twist in all of this. Brad, the man who caused so much pain, ended up harming his wife. I heard through the grapevine that he was arrested and sent to jail. It was shocking, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Maybe if I had reached out to his wife, things might have been different, but it's too late now. I hope she's found some peace and support wherever she is. Mia adjusted surprisingly well to the new school. She made friends quickly and threw herself into her studies and extracurricular activities. She's been dating a well-mannered young man named Ethan for the past few months. At first, I didn't know how to react to her dating. After all, she's been through so much, and I wanted to protect her from any more pain. So I decided to create a new account on Reddit and asked for advice. The responses I got were incredibly helpful and gave me the perspective I needed. Ethan has been a positive influence on Mia. He's respectful, kind, and treats her well. Seeing her happy and thriving has been one of the greatest joys for me. We've had a few dinners together, and I've had the chance to get to know him better. I can see why Mia likes him, and I'm grateful that she has someone who genuinely cares about her. As for me, I started going to church every Sunday. It began as a way to find some solace and community, but over time, I found something deeper. I found God. My faith has given me strength and peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. The people at church welcome me with open arms, and I've made some wonderful friends there. My relationship with God has helped me heal and move forward. I haven't seen or heard from Vanessa in 6 months. After the trial, she seemed to fade out of our lives. Part of me doesn't care about her anymore. She made her choices, and those choices had consequences. But another part of me still wonders. I wanted Mia to grow up in a complete family, and I sometimes question if maybe this was my fault. Maybe I did something wrong, or maybe I could have done more to save our marriage. But those thoughts are fleeting. I've come to realize that it wasn't my fault. I did everything I could to make our marriage work, but it takes 2 people to make a relationship succeed. Vanessa's actions were her own, and she has to live with the consequences. One of the most surprising developments has been my rediscovery of an old passion painting. I used to love painting when I was younger, but life got in the way, and I hadn't picked up a brush in years. A friend from church encouraged me to join an art class, and I reluctantly agreed. That first class reignited a spark in me that I thought was long gone. Now I spend my free time painting landscapes and portraits, and I even had a piece featured in a local art show. It's become a form of therapy for me, a way to express my emotions and find peace. Mia and I also adopted a dog, a sweet Labrador named Max. He's been a wonderful addition to our family, bringing laughter and love into our home. Max has a way of sensing when one of us is feeling down and will come over, wagging his tail to offer comfort. He's a constant reminder of the simple joys in life. One of the most memorable moments from this past year was our road trip to the Grand Canyon. It was something we had talked about doing for years, and we finally made it happen. Standing on the edge of that vast expanse with Mia by my side, I felt a sense of awe and gratitude. We had come so far, and despite everything, we were okay. More than okay, we were thriving. Thank you to everyone who followed our journey and offered support and advice. Your kindness has meant the world to us. As we move forward, I'm filled with gratitude for the lessons we've learned and the strength we've gained.